What is going on, Diablo 2 fans? Dabrunski here, and today I'm going to be covering 5 very niche character builds in Diablo 2. If you guys are bored of the standard meta builds like the Blizzard Sorceress, Lightning Sorceress, Javazon, and Hammerden, this is going to be the video for you guys. These characters are really fun to play, and I highly recommend giving them a shot if you're looking to experiment with something new in Diablo 2. And I often play around with these very niche character builds live on stream. The link for my Twitch channel is in the description below, twitch.com/Dabrunski125. That is where all of my future live streams are taking place, so if you guys could give me a follow there, I'd really appreciate it. But guys, hope you enjoy this video. Let's jump in. So before I cover these 5 unique niche character builds, I just need to give a huge shout out to community member Sicktoid. I've linked his YouTube channel in the description below if you guys want to check him out. He's a very knowledgeable D2 player, and he helped provide footage for 3 of the 5 characters that I'm going to be covering in this video. So guys, I just had to give a big shout out to him. Definitely highly recommend checking out his channel. Which brings us, of course, to the very first character that we're going to take a look at, and that is the Ice Boson. This character is one of the most underrated builds in the entire game, in my opinion. A lot of people like to focus on the Wind Force and Faith Boson builds, trying to just basically maximize all of the physical bow damage, and they completely ignore the Ice Boson, and she is, in my opinion, the strongest bow build, period. You can absolutely crush players 7 Ancient Tunnel runs, no problem. You can do players 7 or 8 Bale runs, no problem, using a low res one on swap. She really just runs over everything, and there's a lot of different alternatives for handling cold immunes. You can either rely on a hard-hitting mercenary, or you can invest points into the fire portion of the bow skill tree. So if you run into a cold immune, you use fire, and then everything else you just completely obliterate with Frozen Arrow. For the Ice Boson, the skill tree is relatively straightforward. Typically, you max Freezing Arrow and then all of its synergies, although I don't recommend putting additional points into Ice Arrow. The added freeze duration isn't really required in my opinion, especially when you have a high volume of shots with your Boson setup. For the passive skill tree, typically you want to achieve 100% max Pierce, which is by putting points into Pierce, and then pairing that with the item Belt Razortail. That will help get you your 100% maximum Pierce, which is very important for chaining together streaks of damage with Freezing Arrow. And then as far as your summons go and your evade skills go, personally myself, I just like to have points into Decoy. I don't like putting the additional points to unlock Valkyrie because I find that the evade skills can be very annoying. While you are not taking damage, they can often drive you insane because you'll actually be kind of like locked and evading and dodging stuff instead of actually attacking with the Boson, which in my opinion can be very frustrating, but on the other side of it, you are not taking damage. So again, it's up to you. It really just depends on how you want to spec your particular Boson setup. As far as the gear goes for an Ice Boson, if you're trying to maximize your cold damage output, you will almost always see the Ice Rumored in a bow being used, paired with Nightwings and an Infinity Mercenary. Now there's alternatives for the rest of your gear, like different amulets, rings, boots, and gloves, but you'll almost always see those 3 pieces being used. Now if you want to run a hybrid spec that balances physical damage with cold damage, you'll see a lot of players swapping out the Ice Rumored for Wind Force. Again, it's really up to you if you want to go the route of completely focusing on maximizing your cold damage output, or a more balanced approach of physical damage and cold damage. But the Ice Boson on her own, she is a blast to play, very powerful, while being very expensive as well, but definitely I highly recommend trying out this build if you're looking to play something new in D2. The next character that I want to talk about is the Tesladin. This is a very interesting character. The build is centered around wielding 2 Dream Rune Words, but there is almost unlimited customization with how you want to spec the character. So you can either maximize elemental damage and substitute with physical, maximize physical and substitute with elemental, and you can really mix things up depending on the mercenary that you use. So you can use an Act 1 Faith mercenary to support you with a Fanaticism aura, and then you can Zeal with a maxed Conviction aura, or you can max Fanaticism and use an Act 2 Infinity mercenary, so you have a little bit of Conviction elemental support to boost your lightning damage. There's just so many different ways that you can spec this character, and while being very expensive, it is insane style points and very, very powerful character. As far as your skill investment goes for a Tesladin, a max Conviction aura really tailors towards maximizing your elemental damage output. If you're running a Fanaticism aura Tesladin, that's maximizing your physical damage output and then using elemental supplemental support. And in that case, you'll probably be running an Infinity Mercenary. And then if you're using Conviction Ore itself, that really opens up the possibilities of like an Act 1 Faith Merc or a Reaper's Toll Mercenary for more damage. Again, it just really depends on what direction you go with this build, because there really is almost unlimited customization with a Tesladin. You will always see 3 pieces of gear used on a Tesladin, regardless of the offensive aura that is used or the mercenary that is paired with the paladin. You will always see Dream in a helmet, Dream in a shield, and then a Grief phase blade. Grief is just used because it's the #1 melee weapon ever. A lot of physical damage and attacks really quickly, so it helps you reach high IS breakpoints, regardless if you're using a Fanaticism aura or not. The Tesladin, though, is a very expensive character to make, but offers almost unlimited customization, so I definitely recommend giving this character a shot if you've never played it before in Diablo 2. The next character that I want to talk about is the Rifson. It's a really interesting melee character that has a lot of additional AoE damage. So you're going to have elemental damage coming from her frozen orb, so it's cold damage, lightning damage from light sentry, and then corpse explosion damage from death sentry, along with her additional melee support from her kicks. So it's a really interesting build that you also kind of feed in poison damage from venom and then use Cloak of Shadows to kind of help give your assassin a little bit more survivability, just making sure that monsters that are close to her range won't be attacking you. It's a very, very powerful spell, and it's actually a really interesting character in general in Diablo 2. It just really mixes up everything and looks really cool. As far as your skill investment goes for the Rifson, you'd be surprised there's not a lot of points put in the martial arts tree. You really only max Dragon Claw or possibly Dragon Flight if you need to reposition your mercenary. Again, that depends on if you're using Enigma or not, but a lot of points are actually put into the trap tree for supplemental elemental damage, and then the Shadow Discipline skill tree, so Venom for poison damage, Cloak of Shadows so that you can kind of hide from monsters, and then Burst of Speed so that you can kick faster and throw down your traps a lot quicker. You will always see 2 specific items used on a Rifson. The first is, of course, the rumored Rift. That is because a Rifson does not exist without this rumored, hence the name a Rifson. And the second is Nightwing's Veil. That is because the extra additional cold damage on this helmet boosts the cold damage of the Frozen Orb procs. Now I also included the unique Stormlash. That is because a regular Kixin and a Rifson, the only difference between the two really is just a different weapon and helmet. And believe it or not, a standard Kixin with an Infinity Mercenary using Stormlash and Shaco can clear players' A Bill Waves just as fast or faster than a fully decked out Whirlwind Barb, and that is because of the Infinity Mercenary with the static field procs from Stormlash is just super effective. A couple kicks, an entire Bill Wave is knocked down to half health, and you have additional supplemental trap damage to whittle them down with your kick damage. But the Rifson or Kixin in general is a super fun character to play. It really does have everything: elemental damage, melee damage, and style points. I highly recommend giving it a shot, and you would be honestly surprised at how effective a regular Kixin is using Stormlash or an Infinity Mercenary. The next build that I want to talk about is the Fireclaw Werebear Druid. It's a really interesting build because anything that's not fire immune you can one-shot, but what's the problem with any character in Diablo 2 that's focusing on fire damage and hell? Well, there is too many fire immunities, so you are somewhat limited to where you can farm. And depending on the weapon that you use with this build, you can have supplemental physical damage support, although most of the damage with this spec comes from the fire damage itself. As far as the skill investment goes for this build, it is relatively straightforward. You just max Fireclaw and all of its remaining synergies, and then put 1 hard point into all of the 1-point shape-shifting wonders like Lycanthropy. It is also highly recommended to put at least 1 point into Shockwave. It is an amazing form of crowd control for this build. Just use Shockwaves, stun everything, and then Fireclaw everything down, and anything that's not fire immune, I promise you, on player 7 difficulty with really good gear, you're going to basically one-shot it. The weapon that you choose to use on your Fireclaw Druid is going to dictate how much you struggle against fire immunities. What do I mean by that? Well, you can either focus on attacking as quickly as possible, only relying on fire damage. This Fireclaw Druid typically will use a Shield Phase Blade with IS and all res jewels in it. The middle approach, which is balanced between attacking really fast and physical damage, is a 4 open socket Grizz Caddy with Shale Runes and an IS jewel. Or the final approach, which is probably the best overall weapon, is an Ethereal Tomb Reaver with a Zod Rune and 2 Reaver Jewels of Fervor. It's very expensive though, not a lot of people have access to that type of weapon, but it does a good job of balancing high increased attack speed breakpoints while also having good melee physical damage. So if you're attacking a fire immunity with the Phase Blade, you're going to have very low melee damage. Your Fire Claw is doing nothing versus the Tomb Reaver option where your Fire Claw is still doing nothing, but at least you have some decent supplemental physical damage to help whittle that fire immunity's health down. While the Fire Claw Druid may be limited to farming certain niche areas and does struggle with fire immunities, it is a super fun character to play. It does a lot of damage to anything that isn't immune to fire, and there's just something really satisfying about running around in bear form, attacking and swinging around in Mach 1 and just one-shotting mobs. So I highly recommend trying out this build if you've never played it before. The final build that I'm going to include in this video is none other than the Bear Sorceress. You cannot make a video like this without including this very niche character. Whoever originally thought of this build definitely thought outside of the box for constructing a viable build. Now, for those that aren't familiar with what the Bear Sorceress is, it's essentially a sorceress that uses a dream shield and a dream helmet and then transforms into werebear using the rumored beast, and then you switch out to a different weapon, and then you use all of the passive skill tree bonuses from the sorceress tree to buff your character even more. It is a super powerful character and can crush Ubers, players a Balewaves no problem, although it is extremely expensive and it's kind of an annoying character to play as well because it requires a lot of different weapon swapping on the fly to be very effective. The skill tree investment for a Bear Sorceress is all about putting points into the sorceress's passive skills in order to make her stronger in bear form. So a lot of points into Lightning Mastery to boost the lightning damage of Holy Shock, a lot of points into Shiver Armor for more defense, and then points into Enchant and Fire Mastery to boost your overall fire damage and attack rating. Things do get a little bit more complicated when you start having a full inventory of fire skillers and like a body armor that's a 3 to enchant Ormus Robes to get the highest possible level enchant, and then swapping all that gear out to full lightning skillers to boost Holy Shock damage. You do not have to do this to have a successful Bear Sorceress, but it is required to min and max everything that you can possibly get out of this build. There's a lot of mandatory gear pieces to make a Bear Sorceress. At the bare minimum, you have to have the Beast Rumored to transform into a bear, and then have a Dream Helmet and Dream Shield. Now on top of that, you want to have ideally a Grizz Caddy so that you can attack faster, and then really nice skillers that you can help complement and make the build even stronger. While the pre-buffing and gear swapping might be a little bit annoying with this character, especially transforming back from werebear form to Sorceress, swapping out your CTA, doing battle command, battle orders, and then going back to werebear form. Yes, it is very annoying, but when she is fully decked out, she is amazing. Insane clear speed, can take on Ubers, players a Balewaves, no problem. Very tanky character, super out of the box, unorthodox, and I highly recommend trying this build if you've never played it before. It does require a lot of expensive gear, but definitely it's worth your effort. Well guys, there you have it. That wraps up today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and you now have a new character build to try out in Diablo 2. As always, if you could throw a like on this video, share it, and even consider subscribing if you're new to my channel. I post new weekly content and stream on Twitch on a consistent basis, so a sub on YouTube and a follow on Twitch would be awesome. I'd really appreciate it. Other than that, guys, hope you have a fan-frickin-tastic day, and I'll see you on my next Diablo 2 video or live stream. Peace out.